this video, we want to extract the metadata and display that in our application. Let me switch back to the application while it is running, and here what I want to do is where we have the image name or the blob name, if they have title metadata, I want to display that in bracket right here. For that, let me stop the application and let me switch back to the code. Right here, let me close all the tabs and we will go inside the container service. The method that is responsible to extract all the blob and container is getAllContainer and blobs. Inside the for each loop, we have individual blob item. There we want to see that if a particular blob has metadata, we want to extract that. So here we have to implement a logic to get or retrieve the metadata. In order to do that, we need a blob client object. So here we will create a blob client is equal to that will be created using the blob container. On there we have a method which is getBlobClient and we have to pass the name of the blob. So that is inside blobitem.name. Once we have a blob client, then we can extract properties on that blob. Now do not confuse this blob client with the underscore blob client that we have right here, because if you examine, this is actually the blob service client and not the blob client. This can be treated as the most important or parent of all of the services that we work with blob. This is the main class that has all of the other functionalities. So on this blob service client, we can access blob container item, and then we have blob container client. On there we have the blob client and so on. So that being said, we have our blob client right here. On this blob client, we have blob properties. So let me create a variable and we will extract that using the blob client that we just created. On there we have a method getPropertiesAsync. That's why we added the await keyword and that will retrieve all the properties. Now in the older version, this was not available and we had metadata properties, but the .NET Core team has simplified by bundling everything inside the blob properties. Then let me create a new string here. I will call this blob to add, and this will be the final thing that we will be adding right here. So we'll say blob to add. That will be the final name. Initially, we will populate this with blobitem.name, and then we want to append title if that is present. So first we need to check if there is a metadata with the key of title. So here on blob properties, we will have metadata. There we have the method contains key, and we have to check for a key name. We will check if the metadata has a key of title. If it does, then we want to add that to our blob to add. So we'll say plus equal to. Let me add a starting bracket, and we want to extract the value of that key. So we'll say blob properties dot metadata of title. And we will attach the closing bracket. That looks good. Of course, you can use string interpolation to make it more cleaner, but since this is very simple, I just used a plus sign. And finally, we are adding that blob. So this looks great. Let's run the project and see what happens. And perfect. You can see we have the cute dog image that we added inside the Azure portal right here. So great. With this, you can see how we are able to successfully retrieve the metadata. Now let's manipulate with our metadata. When we go to container and when we are managing a container and adding a new blob, let's add more properties to the blob. Like let's assume we will add a title and a comment, and those will be added as metadata properties to our blob. How will we do that? For that, we will need a model for the blob with title and comment. So let me close the project here, and we will go to our models folder, add a new class here. I will call this as blob. Let's add that. And inside this class, we will add 3 properties. First will be a title, comment, and a URI. URI will be using later on, but I've just added that for now. Now we won't be adding anything to the database. It is just to bind our view with the model. So perfect, this model looks good. Next we have to modify where we are adding a new blob inside the add file. First change that we have to make is we'll have to add a model for our blob, and then we need two input fields. After the title here, let me add a div, give it a class of column2 here, and in there we will display the label. So first one, let me call that as title. I will copy this, paste it one more time. This will be of column 4. I will add an input with the ASP for title and form control. Looks good. Let me just copy and paste this one more time for comments. Perfect. Let's run the application and see how the view looks like. Let's go to our container, manage, add blob, and perfect. Let me make this a little more cleaner. So I'll copy this 2 and 4 one more time, paste it 2 more times. Here we'll have the upload blob, and we'll copy the input file, paste that here. Next we'll just have the submit button. Inside column 4, let me cut the button and paste it. Let me remove everything else here, and I will just add a little bit of padding. So here I'll say padding top of 3. I'll copy that and paste that. For the other column, let's rerun the application because I do not believe I added the Razor runtime compilation. Let's go to container, manage, add blob, and looks better. Now when we enter all of these details and hit the add button, we want the title and comment to be populated. Let's understand that in the next video. We have added more properties and a model to our add file. Let's make sure that when we post this, we capture those properties. So first I'll open the blob controller where we have add file. Along with the container name, we will also have a blob object here. So let me add the using statement. When you add the using statement, make sure you use the models folder and not system.reflections.metadata. If you do that, things won't work. So we are capturing blob as well. If you want, you can include the container name inside the blob model to make things consistent and have a tightly bound view model. But that's not the focus for this course, so we'll just add a blob right here. When we are calling the blob service, we also have to pass the blob object, and we'll have to modify our blob service. So let's go to blob service, interface, and the implementation. First, we'll modify the interface, and we'll receive a blob object. We'll do control dot. Again, make sure you use models here. We'll call this blob, and let's go to the implementation. Right here, we will also have a blob with our models folder. And then when we are uploading, we need to make sure that we populate metadata as well. Once we configure the HTTP headers before we upload the blob, we can populate or modify the metadata. Metadata is a type of dictionary, so we will create an iDictionary of string. After that, on this metadata, we can add values, or rather key value pair. So we'll say metadata.add, and we need the key and value. The key will be title, and the value will be inside blob.title. So this is one way of adding items inside dictionary. The next way of adding values, or rather entries in dictionary, is here we will write the key name. Next one is the comment. Make sure you do not make a spelling mistake here. And this is inside blob.comment. So now our metadata dictionary will have 2 items. How do we add that to our blob when we upload that? It is pretty simple. We just need to provide that as an option here. So we will just pass metadata and that will configure everything automatically. So with this, let's run this and test it out. Now before we do that, let me switch back and add a debugger right here. That way we can examine the metadata before the blob is uploaded. Let's go to our container and inside the images, let's manage. Let me delete one image that's working perfect. Let's go back there and add a blob. We will add some title and comment here, and let's upload a blob, which is the chair image. Let's add that, and let's examine our metadata right here. Great, you can see we have title and comment. Let's hit the continue button. Then when we go back to the home page here, you should see the new title, which is first title for our chair image. But let's go back to the Azure portal and see if the comment was added or not. So here we will refresh and we have the chair. Let's go there, scroll down, and perfect. We see the title as first title and comment as secret comment. So with this, you can see how we can add metadata when we are uploading our blobs. Now that I have added the metadata, I want to quickly show you how you can update that metadata or even remove a metadata. I won't be going into much complex logic for that. We are adding that metadata to our new blob object right here on line 65. So what we can do is once the object has been uploaded, let me create a new metadata here. I'll call this remove metadata. And this is an empty dictionary, so we can set the metadata here. We already have the blob client, so we'll say await. On blob client, we have one more method, which is set metadata. Now this might change in future and they can change this directly to set properties like they have when we are retrieving. But right now it is set metadata and we can pass the new metadata, which is remove metadata. What that will do is since we are passing an empty one, it will remove all the metadata. Or what you can do is inside our metadata that we have, you can say .remove and we just need the key name here, which is title. And then here you will have to pass the metadata again, so it will be reflected. Let's test it out. Let me add debugging points in all the places. Let's rerun the application and try to upload a new blob. Let's go to our container, images. Let me delete the chair and let's go and upload that one more time. Title and comment will add that and let's upload the blob. Let's hit the button. Let's hit continue. Perfect, so blob has been uploaded. Let's go back. Let me close this and refresh. We have the new chair here and we have both the values for title and comment. Then we are removing title from our metadata and we will set our metadata on line 69. Once that is executed, if we go back and refresh here, you will see the title was removed. So that way you can modify or update the metadata that has been already set. So perfect, we'll stop the application and I'll remove the debugging point. Now I will comment out this code, but you know if you have to modify your metadata or even remove something, you will have to use the method set metadata. Now if we run the application, we have 3 containers. Let's create one more container here and I will call this private container. Let's create that and we will manage that container. Let me add few blobs right here. Great, so we have added 3 images right here. Let's go back to our Azure portal. We see our new container here, which is private container, and it has 3 images. When we create a new container from our website, we have the access level as container and not private. So the name is actually misleading, but we will leave it like that for now. What I want to do next is all the images that are inside the private container, I want to display them in a new tab right here. So let's configure that from the next video.